This tutorial is for 4th grade, Module 5, Lesson 31. In this lesson, we're going to add mixed numbers by first combining the whole numbers and then combining the fractions to come up with our final answer. Question A has been done for us, so I'm going to skip down to question B. Here I have 4 1/4 plus 3 2/4. Since I'm going to start by adding my whole numbers, I'll show that on the line. So I'm going to add the 4 and the 3, the whole numbers from each addend to get 7. And then I'm going to add the fractions, 1/4 plus 2/4. Well, I know when I add fractions that have the same denominator, all I need to do is add my numerators. 1 plus 2 is 3, so the answer is 3/4. Now I just have to take my two sums and combine them for my final answer. That tells me that 4 1/4 plus 3 2/4 equals 7 3/4. The next problem, I have 2 2/6 plus 6 4/6. I'll start by adding my whole numbers. 2 plus 6 equals 8. Then I'll add my fractions. 2 6 plus 4 6 equals 6 6. Notice how our numerator and our denominator are the same in the sum. That tells me that 6 6 is the same as 1 whole. So I need to make that change before I do my addition. Now I can combine the 8 and the 1 to get my final sum. Since 8 plus 1 is 9, that tells me that 2 2/6 plus 6 4/6 equals 9. In question D, I have 2 4/5 plus 1 2/5. I'll add the whole numbers first. 2 plus 1 equals 3. Then I'll add 4/5 plus 2/5. That equals 6/5. Here, my numerator is greater than my denominator. That tells me that I have more than one whole. Let's decompose this number into as many wholes as we can make and then show what the leftover fraction is. Since it takes 5/5 to make one whole, I can use 5/5 and then I would have 1/5 left over since I have 6/5 in all. That 5/5 then is one whole, and then I have one more fifth. Now I'm going to combine that sum with the sum of my whole numbers. 3 plus 1 1/5 gives me 4 wholes and 1/5. Let's look at one more example. Here I have 1 3/4 plus 3 3/4. I'll add my whole numbers first. 1 plus 3 equals 4. Then I'll add my fractions. 3/4 plus 3/4 equals 6/4. Again, I have a numerator that's greater than the denominator, so I'm going to decompose that to show that I can make a whole number and I'll have some leftover fraction. Since I'm working with fourths, I know that it takes 4/4 to make a whole. That means I have 2/4 left since I have 6/4 altogether. I'll show that 4/4 as one whole, and then I'll include the leftover fraction. So there's the sum I get when I add my fractions. I combine that with the sum of the whole numbers. 4 plus 1 2/4 equals 5 2/4. And that tells me that 1 3/4 plus 3 3/4 equals 5 2/4. So you can see it's important to reflect on the sum of the fractions to make sure that we decompose that fraction if we need to before we write our final sum.